Before dawn fully breaks over the surrounding countryside, a medieval castle is already stirring, its considerable resident community, from the ruling lord's family, down to the lowest kitchen servant, beginning another genuinely demanding day of coordinated household management, defense, and administration. Medieval castles, contrary to popular modern imagination focusing primarily on their defensive military function, actually served as genuinely complex administrative, economic, and social centers, functioning simultaneously as fortified military structures, the lord's family residence, and the administrative headquarters managing the surrounding agricultural estate, and its considerable dependent population of peasant farmers and craftsmen. The specific castle design and scale varied considerably depending on the era of construction, the owning lord's wealth and status, and regional architectural traditions, ranging from relatively modest fortified manor houses to the massive, genuinely impressive stone fortifications historians consider among the most sophisticated. Defensive engineering achievements, incorporating design elements, including concentric wall systems, strategically positioned towers, and carefully engineered gate defenses, developed and refined across several centuries of continuous medieval military architectural evolution. A functioning castle required considerable coordinated daily labor to maintain its basic operation, with records estimating even a moderately sized household might include several dozen staff, handling everything from food preparation and household maintenance to security and administrative record-keeping, representing a genuinely complex organizational undertaking considerably more sophisticated than popular simplified images of medieval castle life typically suggest. Larger, more significant noble castles could support considerably larger permanent households, with surviving accounts identifying some wealthiest noble establishments maintaining over 100 staff, reflecting the genuine scale of coordinated domestic and administrative management such significant medieval noble households required to function effectively. As the castle's considerable resident community begins its coordinated daily routine, from servants tending morning fires to guards completing their overnight watch rotations, we begin tracing what an actual day within this genuinely complex medieval social and administrative structure may have looked like. At the physical and social center of castle life stood the Great Hall, a large communal space serving simultaneously as dining area, reception space for visitors and administrative business, and for lower-ranking household members, frequently also a sleeping space, reflecting the genuinely multi-purpose nature of medieval domestic architecture. Before later historical periods would develop more specialized, separated room functions. The castle's lord, and in many cases his wife, who historians note held significant practical responsibility for daily household management, particularly during periods when the lord was absent, oversaw the general functioning of this considerable household, receiving visitors, hearing reports from household officials, and conducting whatever administrative or legal business the estate's management required. Medieval noblewomen's practical household authority was frequently considerably more substantial than popular modern stereotypes might suggest, with documented cases of noblewomen successfully managing estates, including overseeing legal disputes and financial administration, and during active military conflict, occasionally the physical defense of the castle itself during a husband's extended absence. The hall's daily rhythm included regular formal meals, alongside ongoing administrative business, including receiving tenant farmers with rent payments or grievances, hearing legal disputes within his estate, and managing correspondence and visiting messengers connecting the castle to broader political affairs. The Great Hall's physical design typically incorporated a large central hearth or wall-mounted fireplaces, providing essential heating. This provided a natural social focal point around which household activity and evening gathering naturally centered during the colder months. The hall's warmth made it the preferred gathering space for household members across all social ranks within the castle community. Behind the visible activity of the Lord's Hall, a considerable household staff worked continuously to maintain the castle's basic daily function, representing genuinely essential, if historically less celebrated labor, without which the entire castle household could not have practically operated. The kitchen represented one of the castle's most labor-intensive operational areas, with historians studying medieval household records, noting substantial kitchen staff required to prepare regular meals for the considerable resident household, plus additional visiting guests and, during significant feasts or celebrations, potentially dozens of additional attendees requiring substantially expanded food preparation and service. Medieval castle kitchens incorporated genuinely sophisticated cooking infrastructure for the period, including large hearths and specialized cooking equipment, and separate specialized areas for particular food preparation tasks, including baking, brewing, and butchery. Additional essential household staff included laundresses, whose considerable labor maintaining household textiles represented genuinely demanding physical work, along with household servants managing general cleaning, maintenance, and the countless small daily tasks required to keep a large stone structure functioning smoothly. Contrary to widespread modern stereotypes suggesting medieval people rarely bathed, historical evidence confirms medieval households generally maintained attention to personal hygiene, including regular bathing, though methods and frequency differed from modern practice given the practical challenges of heating and transporting water. Castle sanitation infrastructure itself was frequently considerably more sophisticated than popular stereotype suggests, with many castles incorporating dedicated latrine structures. Known as guardrabes, these were typically built directly into exterior walls with waste discharging outside the main structure, representing a genuinely practical engineering solution to basic sanitation needs that medieval castle builders addressed with deliberate architectural planning. Castle defense depended on a combination of the structure's own defensive architectural features and a trained military garrison, typically including knights and soldiers whose training and daily preparation represented a significant component of overall castle operation. Knights represented a demanding, highly specialized military profession requiring years of dedicated training beginning in childhood, typically involving formal service first as a page and subsequently as a squire, under an experienced knight's direct supervision, before the eventual formal knighthood ceremony, marking full entry into this elite medieval military class. Daily knightly training included regular weapons practice, horsemanship training, and maintenance of expensive specialized armor and equipment, representing considerable ongoing financial investment that generally required substantial landed wealth or noble patronage to sustain, explaining knighthood's close historical connection to medieval European nobility and land ownership more broadly. Castle defensive architecture incorporated sophisticated design features, including strategically angled walls designed to deflect projectiles, carefully positioned arrow slits allowing defenders to fire upon attackers while remaining substantially protected, and elaborate gate defense systems, including multiple sequential barriers, reflecting centuries of accumulated practical siege warfare experience. The relationship between a knight and his lord, formalized through homage and fealty, established genuine mutual obligation, with the lord traditionally expected to provide land or financial support to maintain the knight's required equipment and status, while the knight, in exchange, owed his lord military service, loyalty, and a defined number of days military service annually, reflecting the broader structured, reciprocal nature of feudal relationships extending throughout medieval society more generally. Beyond the castle's own walls, the surrounding agricultural estate and its resident peasant population provided the essential economic foundation supporting the entire castle household. This was managed through a system of mutual, if genuinely unequal, obligation historians refer to as the medieval feudal and manorial system. Peasant farmers worked land technically owned by the castle's lord in exchange for labor obligation, agricultural produce, and, in some cases, direct monetary payment. Representing the overwhelming majority of the rural population, their labor provided the food supply supporting both their families and the considerable resident castle population. This relationship, while involving significant inequality and restriction on peasant freedom, also involved genuine reciprocal obligation between the lord and his subjects. The lord was traditionally expected to provide basic protection and practical support during periods of crisis, such as famine or military threat. Villages surrounding a castle typically included their own local church, blacksmithing, textile work, and periodic markets facilitating local trade and community life. Evidence reveals organized community life and local governance structures managing shared resources, operating alongside the broader feudal authority maintained by the castle lord. Formal meals within the castle's Great Hall, particularly significant feast occasions marking important religious holidays or notable family events, represented genuinely important social and political occasions, extending well beyond simple nutrition, providing opportunity for the lord to demonstrate hospitality, wealth, and social status to visiting guests and dependent household members alike. Wealthy noble households' feast meals, according to surviving medieval records and cookery texts, could involve genuinely elaborate multi-course meals, featuring considerable quantities of meat, game, and imported spices, representing significant conspicuous displays of wealth and status, since spices particularly, imported through extensive medieval trade networks connecting Europe to distant markets, represented genuinely expensive luxury goods, whose lavish use during feasts served as a deliberate, visible demonstration of the hosting lord's considerable wealth and social standing. Ordinary daily meals within the castle household, by contrast, were considerably simpler, typically centered around bread, various grain-based dishes and vegetables, with meat consumption, while somewhat more frequent within a noble household compared to typical peasant diet, still representing a meaningfully more limited component of daily eating compared to the elaborate feast occasions reserved for special events. Seating arrangements during formal meals reflected the castle household's broader social hierarchy, with genuine deliberate precision, with the lord and his immediate family and most honored guests seated at an elevated table, while household staff and lower-status individuals were seated at considerably greater social and, frequently, physical distance, reflecting the broader medieval social organization's genuine, carefully maintained hierarchical structure extending into the daily arrangement of shared meals. Entertainment frequently accompanied significant feast occasions, with traveling minstrels, poets, and other entertainers providing music and storytelling, representing genuinely important cultural and social occasions extending well beyond simple dining, connecting the castle household to broader cultural and artistic traditions circulating across medieval Europe through these traveling performers, who moved between different noble households sharing news, stories, and cultural traditions across considerable geographic distances. Religious practice formed a genuinely essential, pervasive component of medieval castle life, with most castles incorporating a dedicated chapel providing regular opportunity for household religious observance. Reflecting the broader central importance medieval Christian religious practice held across nearly every dimension of medieval European social and personal life. The castle chapel typically employed at least one dedicated chaplain, responsible for conducting regular religious services for the household, along with additional responsibilities that could include education for the lord's children, and, in some documented cases, administrative record-keeping, given the relatively higher literacy rates among medieval clergy. Daily household religious practice typically included regular prayer observance connected to the traditional medieval canonical hours, structuring the day's activities around specific designated prayer times, reflecting the integration of religious practice into the daily rhythm, extending well beyond Sunday services alone into the considerably more continuous daily religious observance medieval Christian practice expected. Religious observance also connected directly to the castle's broader relationship with the surrounding peasant community, with major religious festivals throughout the year, providing occasion for community-wide celebration, and, frequently, temporary relief from ordinary daily labor obligations, representing significant occasions within the broader annual rhythm. Many noble families also maintained genuine religious devotion, extending beyond formal observance alone, with documented examples of noble patronage supporting church construction, religious pilgrimage, and charitable giving toward the poor, reflecting the medieval Christian understanding, connecting genuine religious devotion to visible acts of piety and charitable obligation that wealthy noble households were generally expected to demonstrate as part of their broader social and religious responsibility within medieval society. Medieval castles frequently served as the local center of legal administration and justice, with the resident lord typically holding formal legal authority to adjudicate various disputes and criminal cases within his territorial jurisdiction, reflecting the considerable practical governmental authority medieval feudal lords generally held within their own estates. This manorial court system addressed a genuinely wide range of everyday disputes, including property disagreements, contract disputes, and various minor criminal matters, providing the primary practical legal recourse available to most medieval peasants, who generally lacked direct access to the more centralized royal court systems developing during the later medieval period. Legal proceedings within this system generally followed established customary legal procedures and precedent, despite the hierarchical nature of feudal society. Historians note genuine evidence of structured legal reasoning and judgments that demonstrated attention to local legal custom rather than purely arbitrary whim. More serious criminal matters typically required involvement from higher-level royal or ecclesiastical legal authority beyond the local lord's jurisdiction, reflecting a structured medieval legal system incorporating multiple different levels of legal authority and jurisdiction, rather than the popular image of medieval justice as purely arbitrary, unstructured lordly whim without any broader accountability. Despite their formidable defensive architecture, medieval castles faced genuine periodic military threat throughout history. Siege warfare represented one of the most historically significant and thoroughly documented aspects of medieval castle military function. This tested the practical effectiveness of the sophisticated defensive engineering discussed previously. Successful castle defense during a siege depended on several critical practical factors beyond simple wall strength alone. This included adequate food and water storage capable of sustaining the defending garrison and civilian refugees. Historians note that successful defenders frequently depended just as heavily on advanced logistical preparation as on defensive architectural features. Siege attackers employed various specialized techniques and equipment attempting to overcome castle defenses. This included large mechanical siege engines designed to breach walls or launch projectiles over defensive fortifications. Mining operations also attempted to undermine and collapse sections of wall from below. Attackers also attempted to cut off the defending castle's supply lines, gradually forcing surrender through sustained deprivation. The gradual improvement of gunpowder artillery in the 14th and 15th centuries would fundamentally transform siege warfare. Traditional medieval castle architecture became increasingly vulnerable to this new military technology. This represented a turning point that would eventually contribute to the castle's decline as the primary form of military fortification. Many sieges concluded through negotiated surrender once defenders recognized their position had become genuinely untenable. Alternatively, a besieging force might withdraw when the logistical and financial burden grew genuinely unsustainable. Siege warfare imposed a heavy burden on both attacking forces and the defending garrison itself. As the medieval period gradually transitioned toward the early modern era, across the 15th and 16th centuries, the traditional castle's military significance gradually declined. This decline was connected both to the transformative impact of gunpowder artillery and broader political changes across Europe. The centralization of power within increasingly powerful national monarchies reduced the independent military significance of individual feudal lords and their strongholds. Many castles, rather than being abandoned entirely, gradually transformed into primarily residential rather than military structures. Noble families modified original defensive architecture to prioritize comfort and status display over pure military functionality. This reflected the transition as original defensive purposes diminished in practical importance across the following centuries. Modern archaeological research continues expanding scholarly understanding of medieval castle life, correcting oversimplified images of the Dark Ages. Evidence-based understanding reveals sophisticated administrative, architectural, and social systems that governed castle life and feudal society. Standing today within these remains, it is possible to appreciate the genuine engineering sophistication and organizational complexity of this institution. The full social range, from lords to peasants, contributed daily labor and obligation to make castle life function across the centuries. These remarkable stone structures stood at the center of medieval European life,